All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is Jay again, and today we are going to be answering the question of why is my fruit tree not fruiting? I've done everything, Jay. I've done all the steps. I have danced in the full moon. I have sacrificed 10 dragonflies, and I still can't seem to get the fruit set that you're getting with the amount of fruit that you're getting and the quality of fruit that you're getting. What am I doing wrong? I am following all the steps and I am still not getting this amount of production. So today we're going to be going over 10 reasons why your fruit tree is either not producing fruit or is producing very small, not very good quality fruit. And you're wanting to improve your fruit set and get a lot of these larger fruits that I'm getting, and also have the trees so that they are completely soaked with fruit. So we are going to go over that today. This might be a little bit of a longer video, but we are going to be talking about how to get fruit trees to fruit and why my fruit tree has not fruited yet. What am I doing wrong? How do I get this amount of fruit set that you are getting currently, Jay? So that is the question that we are going to be answering today, is why my fruit tree is not fruiting. And we're going to start right here with a very, very beautiful tree, and this happens to be actually one of my favorite fruits and one of my favorite fruit trees. This happens to be a tropic snow white peach. This is a Dave Wilson selection tree, and man, not only is it one of the best fruit trees out there, but this is definitely a good winner or something to start with in Arizona if you're wanting a little bit more of that instant gratification. Okay, so things take time, and that is actually the first point that we are going to strike on today, is maturity. So get your notebook and paper out and let's talk about these reasons. And we'll start with number one, which just so happens to be maturity. And that is the relationship of how long you've had a particular tree in the ground or in a pot. Will tell you how mature it is or how old it is. So trees need to be of a certain age before they start to produce well. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. I know we make it look like that because we do all these videos in quick succession, so it seems like, this is happening faster than it is, but it's really not. So these things take years to really start to produce well. And a peach like this, it's going to give you probably the fastest production. That's why we recommend something like this for new people in Arizona, because this is going to give them fruit in 3 years versus waiting on many, many years for other fruit trees. So each specific tree has a certain maturity level that it needs to hit, a certain age, before it starts to produce well. And it's not all the same for all trees. It's not the 3-year point like it is for stone fruits. Stone fruits are one of your quicker fruit trees. Now let's talk about citrus real quick. So citrus, it takes a little bit longer to produce mature fruit. So citrus trees usually take between 4 and 5 years before they start to produce well. So you really got to know what you're dealing with in order to know how long it's going to take for that plant to produce fruit. All right, so now let's talk about a bigger tree, or a tree that needs to be older before it starts to produce, or a little bit more mature, or you're never even going to see fruit on this tree. And this is a good example for today would be this carob tree, because carob trees, they don't fruit for the first 5 years no matter what. So if you're growing these from a seed especially, and you're waiting for these to fruit to determine whether it's a male or a female, you're going to be waiting in the 5 or 6 year range for it start to produce pods or flowers so that you can even know if it is a male or female plant. So these need a little bit more maturity, and a good way to think about this is the bigger the tree, the longer it's going to take to produce its fruit. But as soon as it starts to produce fruit, it's going to produce fruit for many, 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 many years past something like, say, a peach tree. The stone fruits are a little bit short-lived here in the valley. We usually get about 20 to 25 years out of those, whereas a carob tree is going to live, 100 years plus. So it's time scale. These have a lot longer to grow as big as they want to grow. And so they're not on any kind of a time scale that we're after. Will you get fruit on something like this eventually? Yes, of course you will, but you got to give it time. And this is one thing that people don't allow the trees to have, and they also are very impatient, and they don't want to wait on some of the better fruit, which of course are going to come down the road. So carob trees and mulberry trees and olive trees, anything that's going to be a little bit of a larger tree, is going to just take time to get to the size that it needs to be, and also the production that it needs to be. So I'm going to walk right over here to a mulberry and show you those, and show you that those also need a little bit of size to them before they start to produce. So the mulberries didn't start to produce really well until they got a little bit bigger. So you can see that that is a Pakistan mulberry there, which is the really tall one. And then of course the Shangri-La, which is the wide one. So a good way to think about maturity is, you wouldn't want your kids having kids, would you? No, of course you wouldn't. So you don't want your young plants also reproducing either. You want them to get some size and some structure to them before they start bringing home kids, right guys? So we definitely want some size and maturity on these trees, and then they will start to produce really well. Wow, this thing is big. So I'm underneath the canopy of the Shangri-La here, and you can see it's got some really nice size, and of course it's 5+ years old, and so of course it really produces well. So you got to know what tree you're dealing with to remember how long it needs to mature in order to produce fruit really, really well. Okay, so number 2 is pollination. Pollination is key in order to get fruit off of your fruit trees. So I'm standing back here amongst some of the star fruits that are for sale, and you can see that these have a few little flowers on them. Even though they are off cycle, they are blooming some little blooms here. Now, I don't expect to get these, so just because you see flowers on the tree doesn't mean that it's time to actually set fruit. So star fruit actually are going to set their fruit in the fall. So these flowers, more than likely, no matter what, would have dried up and fallen off even if they had been pollinated. A lot of them don't set during this time in the summer. It is June 1st. A lot of these are going to set more like, November, when those blooms occur. But like, let's say you're actually wanting some star fruit off of your star fruit trees eventually. Well, the pollinator, I'll tell you right now, for star fruits in particular, is hummingbirds. So if you don't have hummingbirds, well, then you're going to be out here hand pollinating these plants. So like, let's say you've got some star fruit trees and you want them pollinated. Well, hang up some hummingbird feeders, and you will get the hummingbirds that will come and pollinate your star fruit trees for you, so that you don't have to do it manually. So for instance, that's a really good example, because you really need to know the pollinator and which one really works for the particular plant. Let's go over mangoes real quick. All right, so mangoes, mango, langos. So eventually you are going to want mango trees in your yard. And what is the pollinator for mango trees? Well, the pollinator for mango trees are flies and mosquitoes. So guess what you've got this time period of the year when these are blooming and when these are setting your fruit? Well, you are getting you're getting flies and mosquitoes, because you got to remember that those are the things that pollinate your mango trees. So if you're wanting really good fruit set on your mangoes, just be aware that you are going to have the flies and the mosquitoes to go with them. All right, so that is pollination. All flowers need pollinated, and you need to know what is their pollinator. All right, so number 3, which should be self-explanatory, is water. Nobody waters their fruit trees enough in Arizona. They just don't. And then they're wondering why my fruit are so beautiful and so juicy. So this is a peach that I just picked up off the ground, and this is a Florida Prince. I'm back here by the Florida Prince. And you want to talk about juicy, guys? There ain't nothing Let me see if I can show you this. I'm going to squeeze this. Let's get down here, maybe. There is nothing like this as far as the juice that it produces. This thing is so juicy. Hopefully you guys can kind of see that dripping off there, but there is nothing like this. Look at that beautiful peach that I'm destroying for the sake of science here. All right, so you see how much water and how much juice we're getting out of this peach. It'll just keep going. So if you're not putting that water in that plant, where do you think it's coming from? Especially when you're in a climate like ours where it's so hot and dry that they're actually losing water to atmosphere all day long. Little seed out there. Oh man, this is beautiful fruit. I hate to destroy this one. But man, you want to talk about, you're not gonna get this at the store, because man, that is just so soft and gooey flesh and so delicious, guys. So water your trees, and especially if you expect to have tropical type plants, if you're wanting things like, say, mangoes or say sapotes. Like here's a real nice Chiku sapote, just absolutely full of fruit. If you're wanting tropical plants like this especially, you're going to need to water. There's just really no exception or any kind of way around this rule. Especially, guys, if you're wanting tropicals. You want things like mangoes, you know, mangoes and star fruits and all these beautiful plants. Well, then you're going to have to give them additional water. Oh man, look at all the mangoes up there. Holy moly. See if I could zoom in on that. Nope. I'll have to do a different video on just that mango tree, because wow, that is quite a set. So water. All right, number four. Number four should be fairly obvious too, but it is also not, and that is food. Plants also like to eat, just like you like to eat. You like to drink water, they drink water. You like to sleep, they like to sleep. So guess what? They actually kind of do all the same things you do. And this is one that people skip, and I think this one's basically probably out of just sheer laziness, is people don't want to feed the trees or feel like they should have to. They want them to produce every year for them and not ever have to do any work. And I'm telling you guys, that's not the way it works ever. Nothing's free. No matter what it is, nothing's free. You're going to be doing some work. So food. So you're going to have to add some sort of a compost to your yard, or let it naturally, things start to kind of compost on their own. So I'm back here underneath the peach tree, and you can see that there is a lot of litter. There's a lot of tree litter that I actually leave. So my yard, or this house, would be like a landscaper's nightmare, basically, because they would want to go through and clean all this back up. But you have to realize that this is all natural food, or this is the way the plants actually feed themselves out in nature. Now, you're not going to be able to do this immediately, because you're not going to have this amount of organic matter that's going to fall in your yard. You're going to have to start with, say, a compost, which I do sell a compost, which is a good feeding for your fruit trees, before you start to develop a yard like this where you don't actually have to feed them anymore. So everything that falls basically stays in the yard, and a lot of the fruit gets took back up by the tree again to provide those nutrients back to that particular tree again. So the peach is right over there. You can see the trunk of it right there. And I'm actually under a mango here, where a lot of that fruit has already fallen. And of course, you know, the birds and the bugs have already started to kind of work their way away at eating all of the peaches, and we're going to be left with a bunch of pits out here of fruit that we missed, because this tree is so productive. There's just years and years and years of peach pits built up out here. I don't know if you guys can see these, but there are literally years of peach pits that have fallen out here, and I just leave them. I let the fruit that falls, I let it go back to the ground, because like I said, this is a natural way that the plant is going to eat and feed itself. So the fruit falls, it is cannibalized by bugs and by other earthworms, and then it is reabsorbed back to the tree again. So there's quite a nice little living layer out here. And if you kind of pull this back, it's probably going to be hard to see, but it is quite alive down in there. There's quite a few little bugs moving around. And you can also see that this top layer is pretty much all earthworm castings. So like probably a foot deep out here in the yard is now all 100% worm castings, because that is what is plowing all this fruit and doing all the work. So if I scrape some of this up, you guys can see that it's just beautiful stuff. Well, full of worms. You see one right there. Come on, guy. Right? And they're just out here working all this material, and they're also providing drainage for you guys. So that is something that is very much needed, especially here in Arizona, is good drainage. But if you look at the soil quality here, I mean, this stuff is just absolutely amazing. It's just alive. You can see, do you see all the movement? I'll see if I can hold still here for a minute. You know, we got pill bugs, we got millipedes, we got earthworms. We have all these decomposers that are out here breaking down all this natural compost, right? Oh man, it's a lot of that's peach pits too, actually. It's kind of funny. Yeah, a lot of that's peach pits. Tons of earthworms in there. Just a really good, high quality soil. Oh man, this is great. See the little worms there, right? And they're just everywhere. So you want good biodiversity in your soil, and you want a good, active, healthy soil if you expect your plants to feed. So that covers feeding, compost. Okay, so number 5 is climate. It is where you are going to put that tree in your particular yard. And I can tell you right now, if you go and plant something like a chiku sapote in your front yard where it's hot and there's just a bunch of afternoon sun, then of course you are never going to get fruit off of your chiku sapote because it's burning up. And that happens to a lot of these plants. It's going to be the same way on mangoes. Wow, look at that big cluster. They don't like afternoon sun. So if you go and dump this plant in the afternoon sun, it's going to burn every year, and you're never going to get fruit off this thing. And you're going to ask yourself year after year, why am I not getting fruit off of this thing? It's because you dumped a plant that did not belong in a certain area into an area where it is not going to live or be happy or produce. You have to realize that a lot of these plants, especially when it comes to your tropicals, they like a lot of humidity. They've got these really fine leaves, especially their new ones, that will burn and cook in the full sun. So if you put trees like this in the full afternoon sun, then never expect fruit off of them, because they're going to just exist. They're going to maybe just live, but they're not going to produce really, really well. You want to give every plant its correct microclimate that it needs, okay? You can see back here, it's looking pretty good. Now, can things deal with the sun when they're bigger? Absolutely, they can deal with sun when they're bigger. So here is a starfruit tree. Let me see if I can even get all of it in focus. I can't. It is right there and sticking way up into the afternoon sun. So it's pretty much, it only gets afternoon sun at this point. The top of that metal there is about 9 foot. Okay, and same with this chiku. You can see he's grown up into the sun, but he certainly did not start in the full sun. He started down here in this food forest like a lot of these other trees did, and then he made his way up into the full sun, you know, just like a lot of these mangoes. And actually there's a really big starfruit right there. Right there is a starfruit, and there's a fig that's the same size right there. So you can see that these two have the same sun exposure and they are doing fine, but they were also bigger trees once they're established, okay? Beautiful stuff. So climate, microclimate. Make sure you put your plants in the correct position if you expect them to fruit. All right, so number six is going to be chill hours. And how critical are chill hours on things like stone fruits and apples and pecans and pear trees and apricot trees? How important is the chill hours on those in order for you to get fruit off of them? Well, it's everything. Guys, it's everything. It's, if you don't have the correct chill range, you're not going to get fruit, because the chill range is going to determine when the plant wakes up in the spring. So whether it wake up really early or whether it wake up late. If you are in an area where there's high frost and cold, you're going to want things that wake up a little bit later, because obviously you don't want the blooms frozen on the tree, right? Now, we're here in Arizona. We're in the desert valley, so we need things that are really low chill. And if we can get plants that are about 300 hours and under, that would be great. That you're going to get really high production off of a tree like that. So I have two examples of trees, because one thing I hear quite often is, well, I'd like to stretch my production over a long period of time. In other words, I would like to have peaches June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, guys, I get it, but that's not going to happen. So what's going to happen is you'll get all of your peaches here in early June, or May even. Most of the peaches are actually already gone. So you're getting all your peaches during that time period, and then it switches over to things like guavas and mangoes and things like that for the summer. So you're not going to have peaches all year long. I'm just kind of sorry to tell you guys that. And I have a really good example in the yard, because I left examples on purpose so that you guys stop buying some of these higher chill trees. So this is the first example I showed you, which is the tropic snow peach, okay? And this isn't even a really big tree. I mean, you can I'll kind of pan back a little bit. You know, it's in the area of probably around 12 feet. And it's just soaked with fruit. There's just fruit all over every single branch on this tree. And consistently, meaning I get this every year, not just this particular year. Now, let me kind of scroll over to the side here, and I'm going to show you another peach tree. And this is a later variety peach tree. Okay, so this is a Babcock peach. And I purposely left these in because I want to show you how much bigger of a tree this is. So way, 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 way bigger tree. But if you'll notice, there's no fruit on it, or there's very little fruit, or there's these very tiny, tiny little fruits that haven't quite come to maturity yet, okay? And that is the result of having too high of a chill peach tree or stone fruit tree, is you're never going to get fruit off of them. They're going to be very small. They're going to stay like this. They might get a tiny bit bigger, and you're going to be eating a peach maybe the size of a dime here in, July or August. So I like to stay away from a lot of these higher chill trees, like the August prides and the June prides and July prides and Babcock peaches, some of these that are higher chill, because they just don't produce. So you'll get a tree, you'll get an absolutely beautiful tree, a nice big peach tree, which I did leave this one in here because it does provide quite a bit of shade. But it's more of a lesson learned of stop buying these higher chill trees, because they're not going to produce, or they're going to produce like this. And I don't think that's exactly what your guys are wanting, especially when you see one like the tropic snow peach over there with so many full-size peaches. So chill hours are everything as far as getting fruit off of these type of trees. All right, so number 7 is potted versus planted. And what does that mean exactly, Jay? So it means a couple different things, and I'm going to see if I can explain this the best way possible, okay? So let's say you've got 2 trees and they're the same age. Let me pan back from here. You can see that this is a little peach tree in a pot, and you can see that there are also peach trees all behind it, right? Most of these are Florida Prince peaches, but the peach variety doesn't matter in this particular case. So we're talking about time, and we're talking about time spent in a pot. So let's say you've got a peach tree that you've just recently put in a pot, okay? So that peach tree is not going to produce that first year for you And it shouldn't. I don't know why you would expect it to. You want it to actually grow some size in order to hold peaches. You saw how heavy those peaches are. They are going to break every branch on a very small tree like this, right? So now let's fast forward in time to a 2-year tree in a pot, okay? So that would be like this tropic snow peach right in front of me. So this has been in a pot for 2 calendar years. And can you get fruit in pots, guys? Absolutely would be your answer to that. Absolutely you can. I mean, there are so many fruit on this little tree. Let me see if I can pull back some of the leaves here so that you guys can see how productive, man, even a little peach tree like this is in a pot. I mean, that's a good amount of fruit, and you have to also consider the fact that I have thinned this peach tree already down because he is in a pot, and I wouldn't want to leave all this fruit on it or it would start to break branches. But you can see we've got some beautiful fruits coming on here, okay? So this is a 2-year plant, right? Now let's say you left this tree in a pot for another year and you got it to the 3-year point. Well, it's going to be a much larger tree. It's going to be like some of the peaches that I've got back here, and it is also going to set a ridiculous amount of fruit. Oh wow, look at that little branch. Just straining. Look at all those peaches on that little branch on that potted tree, guys. That is quite amazing. So let's say you left it in a pot. Year 3, it would fruit well, right? Now, let's say you planted this next year, right? You planted this one in the middle of the winter, coming up this next year, and you're expecting all this fruit from it coming up. Well, it's probably not going to fruit that year. And well, why, Jay? It's got fruit on it now. Why would it take a year off from fruiting? Because you've planted it, okay? So you've changed its environment. You've gone from a pot to in the ground. The tree knows the difference. And so now the tree is going to concentrate most of its growth on its root system in order to develop a nice big root system in order to, 1, support the tree, and 2, support this amount of peaches and fruit for you in the future, okay? So it's going to change behaviors, right? Now, if you just leave them in a pot for many, 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 many years, well, then they'll just keep fruiting. But almost the instant you put this thing in the ground, it's going to stop fruiting. I'll show you another example. So same thing on this. This is what we would consider a 1-year-old pear, and they do grow very, 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 very quickly. So let's go over to a 2-year pear. And you can see that it's going to be quite a bit larger at that point. I'm hoping this kind of picks up. And it's going to be just soaked with fruit, just absolutely soaked with fruit. I'm hoping you guys can see some of these pears, but man, it's just covered. These trees are just covered in fruit. Little Asian pears, all kinds of pears. So if you left these in the pot another year, then of course they would keep fruiting and fruiting and fruiting. But the second you drop it in the ground, you've changed everything on it. And now you restarted the clock, and it's going to take some more time for it to bite back in again in order to start to produce like this. Okay. So that's the difference between being in a pot or being planted in the ground. It's really going to change its behavior for a few years once it gets planted. Okay, so number 8 of why I'm not getting fruit off my fruit trees is wind. So wind is a double-edged blade, okay? So you need it for some things like pecan trees in order to pollinate, but things like starfruit trees, it'll kill those off, right? So we don't want wind on starfruit trees, but we want wind around our pecan trees. So wind is a very, very important factor on drying and keeping humidity to the plants. And a lot of them, like I said, are going to dry up without that extra moisture. So wind is very, very important and not thought of that much, but it's very, very drying. And it really happens a lot, especially during the citrus season, because a lot of the blooms will actually dry up and blow off, and a lot of people will not get their fruit. It also happens during the monsoon season. So during the monsoon season, which will be next month here in July, it'll start. That also starts to dry certain plants up from the wind, things like figs, which is the reason why a lot of people get dried figs that kind of drop off in the middle of the summer there, which is usually when they're producing a lot of their main crop. Okay, so wind, like I said, is going to be good for some plants, and it's going to be not so good for other plants. So wind is also another reason why your fruit trees are not producing fruit. Okay, number 9 of why am I not getting fruit off of my fruit trees. This one you won't encounter that often, so that's pretty good, I guess, on your side of things. And that is whether a plant is a male or a female plant, okay? And it's not that critical on most fruit trees. It's going to be only a certain amount of fruit trees. But if you're wondering why it's not producing fruit, it might be the cause of why it's not producing fruit. So in this particular case, I've got what's called a key apple or a kai apple. And this is a really good fruit tree, guys, but it is also very full of thorns. So this is a nasty plant, but it is also really good for like protection on your house. If you don't want anyone to break into your house, you can definitely put one of these in front of the window and nobody is ever going inside, okay? So this happens to be a female kai apple. Let me see if I can back up from this one a little bit. So you can see its size, and then directly across the walkway here is a male key apple. And both of these are required if you want fruit on the female. And this is actually a really interesting fruit because it's called a key apple or a kai apple. Looks nothing like an apple, and it tastes almost exactly like an apricot. So you want to talk about a cool plant to have, especially if you've got a desert landscaped yard. Well, you can definitely put one of these in. Wow, he's gotten pretty tall right out there in the full sun. And this is a male. So in this particular case, you're going to need a male and a female to get fruit off of these trees. But luckily, there's not a lot of fruit trees that are actually like that. All right, we're at number 10. We are at the last one of the day, guys. And if you have made it this far into the video, please smash that like button and hit the subscribe button. You don't know how much this actually encourages me to keep making these videos and to keep growing all this beautiful fruit for you guys and to put the videos out. So what is number 10? Number 10 is going to be something you really can't do much about, and that is going to be alternately bearing. So alternately bearing trees are typically going to put on a ridiculously heavy load one year. So this is a really good example here. This is a Flavor Delight Apium, which is also a Dave Wilson selection. And you can see that this thing is just disgusting with fruit. I mean, this thing is just absolutely loaded up. I've never seen this thing quite so full of fruit. There's literally fruit bowing down across this archway. Let me see if I can back up here. So this is the walkway to the back of my house, right? So I come back this way to the backyard, and then you look up, and there are these archways of apiums that are hanging above you that you can just reach up and pick. Look at these. Oh man, just beautiful. Loads and loads and loads. I can't tell you how many are on this, you guys. There are so many. It even surprises me a little bit. And especially up here in the sun. Oh my gosh, there are so many up there. Okay, and it's the same way with this star fruit that actually happens to be right across the way. So I've got a star fruit that helps it kind of form that arch into the backyard. And this one will also alternately bear, where it'll put on a ton of fruit one year and then almost nothing the next year. So it kind of takes the year off. So yeah, that is alternate bearing, guys. There's not too much you can do about that situation, except make sure you feed and water them so that they do bear really nice and heavy for that next time around, right? So all right, guys, that is it for today. That is 10 reasons why you might not be getting good fruit or good fruit set off of your trees. And if you want to increase your production, like around here, well, then you're going to have to follow several of these steps, and then also just give it time, guys. That's the one thing that people just don't want to give plants. Is that's the ultimate rule, is they'll fruit when they want to. they have nothing to do with you as far as your timeline goes and when you expect fruit or when your family expects fruit. A tree is on a completely different timeline of its own. So put them in and just expect them to fruit sometime in the future. And if you stick with lower chill varieties or tropical trees, of course, you know, you'll get good fruit off of those for sure. Here's some guavas. All right, guys, that is it for today. And I really appreciate you guys watching the videos. And I need to do a couple little tours here of the nursery, because I do have some pretty cool plants that I think a lot of people would be interested in. And I need to get out here and get a video done of that. But that is it for today, guys. Please hit the like button, subscribe, and thank you for watching.